Hey, Madeline. Welcome back to the emPowered Author Podcast.
Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. Today we get to talk about another aspect of how we bring to life a brand. Mm-hmm. And I know I said previously that fonts were my favorite, but I lied. Color's my favorite. And that's what we get to talk about today, the color palette. Mm-hmm. I kind of giggle because there's a author that we've done work with before, and he laughs at me when I tell him in the beginning, I'm like, we need your color palette figured out. He's like, Stephanie, seriously? And so now we'll do something. He's like, he says it in his like most like silly voice. He'll say, now, is this in my color palette? And I'm like, yes, it is. Thanks for asking. Your brand color palette. We always look at that. Mm-hmm. So I have to share with those who are listening today that I'm really like smiling big when we think about color palettes because it takes me back to an experience I had when I was little. So I couldn't have been older than 12. My mom took me for my birthday to go get my colors done. Did you ever hear of this before I told you about it?
No, I hadn't.
No, okay. You're too young. Hey, when for your next birthday, you should go get your colors done.
Where do you even go?
I don't know. And I'll have to ask my mom. She would know. Mm-hmm. But literally, I went to a store that does this. And what they did is they were able to take a look at my skin tone, my eyes, my hair color, my personality, and merge all together and put together like literally something I could hold that had every color that would look great on me. I'm not joking. And I didn't realize that there were like 20 shades of green or, that neon yellow wouldn't work great for me or, whatever, like certain colors because I have olive skin tone but I'm pale and I have freckles and then dark attributes. Like there were certain colors, like red looks good on me, but it was the orange red, not the blue red. Mm. You understand, right?
Yes.
Like as you build logos, because there's different types of that. And so I walked away realizing that for me and my own kind of personal brand, that there was a relationship with the different aspects of me and my personality and beyond my personality, the specifics of things I couldn't change, right? Like my eye color, my skin tone, all of that stuff that made the colors work right for the type of person I was portraying. Mm-hmm. And that is so true with logos and branding, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. It's just like you described, for someone, if you have blue eyes, this works better for you. It's the exact same thing for brands. Different colors work in different ways. I absolutely love color. I always find myself drawn to to brighter colors, mm-hmm. and I love colors that play off of each other in different ways. I mean, there's so many different combinations, and there's so many different ways of using color to bring out a certain feeling or a certain mood.
I think color is like the cherry on the top of the banana split. Yes. Like you've created this foundation, you've added all of the elements, and then you're like, so I know that this will do this, but without color or deliberately not using color, right? Like a black and white brand speaks something right. too.
Yes.
But that is like the game-changing piece. I feel like right before we started chatting about the episode, we were talking about my book, Color Today Pretty, and the brand that was built around that. And the graphic designer that brought that brand to life showed me, I think it was 3 or 4 different color options. I loved all of them. And there was this one that was an orange and like a blue teal that merged together. And I was like in heaven. It was gorgeous. But I stepped back away and I'm like, it was the same logo, complete same logo, different color. Like that logo or that color would have brought forth a whole different set of feelings than the purples and pinks and yellows and like small shades of blue that I ended up going with would have. And so I would never have thought until that happened did I realize that. Or when I was creating the emPowered PR Group brand, oh my gosh, picking a color for that was so difficult because I knew who I wanted to reach, but I was all over the place and trying to figure out the right thing. So color matters.
Yes, absolutely. It's very important. It's like honestly one of the first things that people see when they look at your brand, from a distance, they may not be reading your name. They may not be able to make out, what your icon is.
Yeah.
But they instantly see the color, and that's kind of the first thing that like registers in your brain what the color of something is.
Yes. And colors bring forth different feelings and different emotions.
Yes.
You wouldn't even think about that, but they do, don't they?
Yes, absolutely. I mean, I found myself, taking pictures of certain color palettes in the store, to save and to have because they just work so well. And they convey this certain feeling that's very compelling.
And that would make sense for where your zone of genius is bringing brands to life. Again, this whole season is, I really should call it the get inside of Madeline's head. And now that we know that when she goes shopping, she takes photos of brands. I love it. I do the same thing in regards to marketing ideas. When I see something, I'm like, screenshot, love this. It worked because it got me. But same things with colors. And I've also actually, and this might be something we would suggest an author that comes to us do as well, is take photos of things that feel good to you. Like, go places. So I'm a big photographer. I don't know if you knew this. Did you know this?
No, I didn't.
I'm not a good photographer. Let me backtrack. I'm not a great photographer. I feel like I'm decent, but I love photography. It's like an outlet for me. But as I kind of think about a brand, I could see myself taking my camera and just going somewhere and taking photos and say, what does this feel like? Does this flower make me feel a certain way that I want my brand to? And even if you were to do something like that, then that could come back to you and say, Madeline, here's a suite of some things that feel right to me. And then you could start pulling from that and realize that there's different things that the author may not have ever spoken.
Yeah, absolutely. That's something that I use all the time in design, and it's called visual brainstorming, where you're just gathering this collection of things that visually represent your brand. Like a picture of a pretty flower that's a color that you feel like invokes your brand. I mean, we're not necessarily going to use that image in your branding,
right?
But it's something that visually, makes you think of your brand and how you want your brand to be shown.
Absolutely. I think that color is pivotal. It's powerful. It is a big part of a design element for sure. And like you mentioned earlier, it's one of the first things that people notice when they interact with you. So let's talk for a minute about how different colors speak in different ways. And I want to do like the battle between cool colors and warm colors.
Yeah, so that's often, kind of like the first difference between, sorting out different types of colors, if a color is warm or if it's cool, because those two different, types of colors, they have very different feelings, very different meanings. So cool is often, it's more calming, it's more mellow, think of like the sky or like the ocean, very, very calm and soothing. And then warmer colors often have the opposite effect. So they're higher energy, they're like, they pump you up. Think of, like a fire, it's like, it's like a hot, more of like a fast energy, while, a cool color would be a slower energy.
That's interesting. And if you really look at all of the colors, and let's be real, like there's only how many like basic colors out there? Every color can be cool or be warm.
Yeah, I mean, there can be cooler shades of an orange, and there can be warmer shades of an orange. It's just kind of, like which way that those lean.
So my favorite color is green. What's your favorite color?
Blue.
Blue, okay.
Yeah, it's the most common, so I'm kind of basic.
Really? Is it because you're a UK fan?
No.
No.
No, not UK.
Uh-oh. We have a different battle here. So we're based out of the Kentucky, Southern Indiana area, and the University of Kentucky, and college basketball is kind of a big deal down here. Yeah. I don't really care about sports at all, but my husband's a UK fan, and it was kind of a prerequisite to get married that I had to be okay with that. Are you a UVL fan?
I am. I don't really care about sports either, but only because that's where my brother goes to college. So, I mean, I'm kind of biased in that way.
So if you were to ever pick up my book and read my book, I talk about how my grandmother is a big U of L was a big U of L fan. And when she passed away, she started sending me redbirds, which cardinals are the U of L's mascot. And I see them everywhere. But it was really important in our life that my husband say they're not cardinals, Stephanie. They're redbirds. So my farm is Redbird Farm. I homeschool my kiddos, and it's Redbird Academy. So it's not cardinal, it's redbird. That was our kind of differentiation. He's like, we can only have red in the house if it's redbird, not cardinal. He's really not that big into it either, but it's kind of funny to laugh about it. But so I mentioned our favorite colors. Green's my favorite. And I love it because my kids are always like, Mama, I colored this and it's green and it's your favorite. And I never have the heart to share with them that, like, I love green, but not every shade of green. Right? Like when in my wedding colors, olive green was a part of our wedding colors, but it was like a bright olive green. And I really love like the bright grass green, like the earthy, but like growth green. That's different than like the mildewy green, right? Like it's important to talk about that.
To me, there's like certain colors that have such a wide variety of feels. I mean, all of them do. All colors have all these different hues and shades that all have different feelings and different connotations. But I think green in particular is one that just has so many different feelings.
I know.
Like, I think blue has so many variations and so many different feels. But I think green in particular has just so many more,
and it tells a different story.
It really does. Like neon, there's like neon green, and then there's like a dark forest green. They're completely different, same color, kind of basic color, but like they're worlds apart as far as
absolutely feeling. And when you're thinking about your brand, even if you go, oh, I just like the color green, no, we have to dig deeper to understand, okay, you like that color, that's great that you like it. Will that color speak to the general public or your target market?
Yeah, and even if we land upon, like a green color, that doesn't mean that any shade of green will do. You have to pick a shade of green based on, what's going to appeal to your audience, what feeling that particular shade gives. So maybe you think green is going to work for your brand, but you think that you want a neon green, and we say no, a darker blue would work better than a neon green, even though maybe a darker green might work even better than that blue.
And this is, again, I feel like every episode in the season I go, and this is why I love having Madeline as a part of the emPowered PR group team, because she can think through those things. And I love it too, especially how you and I collaborate, because you give a lot of thought to that, and then you bring it to the table, and I'm able to go, okay, like this a lot. This thing, it still might work, but I'm not connected to that. And so it's just a beautiful collaboration, and that's why it's amazing.
I think a big part of why I like working with you is because you enjoy me going on about that kind of stuff. Whereas, my friends and family who aren't like the creative types are not into this kind of stuff. They don't appreciate it as much, when I rant about stuff like that. So I appreciate your appreciation, and I think it's really good how we get along.
Oh, well, thank you. And I'll be honest, my friends and family don't like when I get excited about this stuff either. So that is why I love this podcast, because the people who are listening need this and are willing to absorb the excitement that we have for stuff that other people just think is common knowledge, right?
Yes, absolutely.
Right. It's all about finding the right partnership and the right pairing in relationship, in collaboration, and in brand colors. So, it's really also important that we talk about complementary colors and contrasting colors. So let's talk a minute about that, because I think, there have been brands that I've seen that are like monotone or fall flat. They may have a gorgeous brand color, but if they don't have other elements to it, it just kind of is wah-wah, right? Like it just it stops there, and you want there to be more to it. So talk to me about what do you mean by complementary colors?
So complementary colors are two colors that they're often pretty much opposites,
Mm-hmm.
but they work together because they're opposites. So because they're different from each other, they look good next to each other. So kind of the most common ones are like blue and orange, yellow and purple, and then red and green. Now you don't necessarily want to use those, like red and green are often, that's Christmas. Yeah, that's Christmas. So you don't necessarily want to use, just the base combinations of the complementary colors, but using those concepts really adds to your brand because it allows those colors to play off of one another and create, visual interest, but also, an interesting feeling that is, it's more lively, it's more vibrant than it would if you were just using a couple shades of one color that were pretty similar to each other.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I think it also gives, and I'm always thinking about what do I do once you've created the brand and the logo and all of this and the palettes, and I get excited. I'm like, if you have a couple of colors, it allows us to also take your identity and create subset of your niche, right? And so it could very well be that your brand speaks to women of all different ages, or for women, 25 to 60. Well, if your brand, let's say, has 3 colors, a leading color and 2 complementary, depending upon if you skew younger or older, you might choose to use one of the complementary colors more heavily in one genre or one group of your niche than the other. And I think that just gives your brand life and differentiation.
Yeah, you can also kind of think of it as like your brand colors kind of helping identify like subsets of your brand.
Yep.
Kind of like how if you think about Fanta flavors, that everyone knows Fanta, it's orange, but they have these additional flavors. They have like a blueberry, they have a grape.
They do?
They do. Yeah. It's
really good. I didn't know this.
It's really good. But those are kind of like subsets. They're like secondary colors that they're associated with the brand, but they identify like a sub-brand of the main like,
that's
Fanta.
Cool. But it's all in the same kind of hue.
Yes. Yeah, they're all like the fruity, bubbly type colors.
Which are bright and energetic, and that speaks to the brand.
Yep, absolutely. But it's still that brand feel, but they have these additional colors that add to it.
So talk to me about primary and secondary colors. We're talking about these secondary, but help me understand, or help those listening understand, why a primary color is important.
So having like a color that's kind of like the main color of your brand, it's essential because you don't want your brand to be like super conflicting. Yeah. Like you don't want all your colors to be competing with each other because that can cause confusion and that can maybe stop people from having brand awareness because there's too much going on. So you kind of want to have one or two primary colors that are really kind of like the core of your brand that make your brand really recognizable, but then have these secondary colors to kind of add to the primary colors without overly competing with them, without drowning them out.
Oh, I like that. And I think you're right. If you don't not only have a primary color in your brand, and if you aren't using it, it could also fall flat and it could make people feel like they're all over the place.
Yeah. If maybe if your logo is one set of colors and then let's say your website is a different set of colors, they're going to feel very disconnected.
Absolutely. For the emPowered PR group, the font color is navy. And so I find this interesting. I'll share with those listening today. Navy to me is never a color I would have thought would be a part of my brand, because when I think of navy, I think of something that doesn't match with my brown shoes or my black shoes, right? Like literally, like I would put on navy and I'm like, what do you wear with it? But the navy color that was selected to be a part of my brand and my logo feels very like sturdy, but very fresh. Like and that's where the hue and the shades come in. I freaking love this navy. Love it. And anytime I put it on any of my marketing materials, or I have it as kind of the base for my proposals, it feels so like forward but established, and it's just, I love everything. And who would have thought navy.
Yeah. I always think it's a good idea not to say that you hate a color or you say, I can't use that color ever.
Yep.
I don't think you should like box yourself in like that because there's always, a million different ways and different shades to use in a certain color.
I'm kind of giggling about an author that you and I recently worked with, and she's like, I don't like yellow. Mm-hmm. Was it yellow or orange?
It was yellow.
It was yellow. I don't like yellow. And the brand was a brand that needed the yellow. Mm-hmm. Like it was it
was like bright and
bright and
fresh.
but warm and like inviting. Yes. Like the brand needed to feel like she could reach through the computer and hug you and have hope. Mm-hmm. And yellow was important. So I remember right before we finished it out, the primary colors are not yellow. Mm-hmm. But I was like, Madeline, we have to get yellow as a secondary color in there. And it's gorgeous. And now that we've helped to bring her website to life, that little extra piece has made a whole difference. So don't ever say, oh no, never this, because that might be just what you need. Because again, keep in mind, your brand and the story that the brand shares is not really about you. Like it's about how that people will feel when they interact with you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely.
So, okay, so we just talked about primary and secondary colors. I made a note, when you think about how many colors to have in your color palette, I think you and I talked about like 1 to 2 primary colors and like 2 to 3 secondary colors. So that way you walk away with no more than like 5 colors in your palette. Mm-hmm. Do you feel like that's a good kind of...
Yeah, and it may depend on the type of logo you have too.
Yes.
If you have a logo with an icon, you'll often have, probably at least 2 colors in your logo.
Yeah.
But maybe if you just have a logo type, you may only have 1 color in your logo. So usually the ones used in your logo are your primary colors.
Yeah.
And
then,
Yeah, and then your secondary colors kind of like add to and complement your primary colors.
I loved when we were talking about this and you said the secondary colors and all your colors should be sisters, not cousins.
Yes.
Explain that. I thought that was so brilliant.
Yeah, so they should all relate to each other in a way, and they should obviously all look good together because you're going to be using these colors next to each other, within close proximity. So you want them to look like sisters and not distant cousins who look nothing alike and don't really relate to each other.
That was awesome. You need to trademark that or copyright that. It was a really cool way to say it because I think you're right. Like now I understand when I look at my kids and they all have similarities, but they're all a little bit unique. Mm-hmm. Same thing. That's what you want with your colors. You want them to feel, like they come together for Christmas and get along, right? You don't want them to feel like they're the oddball family member.
They shouldn't compete. They shouldn't look, entirely distinct, like super different.
Yeah.
They should be like their own person, but like relate to each other.
I love that. I think it's completely right. You do want variety. Some brands that monotone makes sense, but just know that monotone is telling a story. Mm-hmm. Whereas when you have a little bit of variety, that tells a story too.
Yeah. Tells like 2 different types of stories.
Absolutely. And I think too, so I have a color palette for one of my brands that has a lot of colors because it's meant to be really fun and energetic. But I find that I still need some color, one color that's like a neutral that grounds me. Mm-hmm. And so talk to me about like what a neutral could look like, because neutral is not just beige anymore.
Yeah. So I mean, it could be the navy you're talking about. It could be like a black or a gray. It could even be like just a very dark version of a color, maybe like a forest green or something like that. So it kind of allows, it's kind of like a neutral, so it allows, it can let your other color stand out a little more. You can use it maybe where you want something to be a little more subdued and not quite as much going on. It can be just kind of that strong, silent color that's going to ground your color palette.
So not to throw another analogy in the mix, but I kind of feel like the neutral is like the tree trunk and the roots, right? Mm-hmm. Like it's the basis of you, and then your limbs and the leaves and how you extend and reach. That's where the color variation can come in. Yeah. And but you still need that rootedness, that piece, and neutrals allow that. Yeah. So it, and just know that a phenomenal graphic designer will create a neutral in your color palette that makes sense, and somebody's neutral might be a pink. Like that might be their neutral, right? I mean, it's that kind of grounding piece. thank you for indulging me on not just my own color palettes for clothing, but helping me realize that my brand and any author's brand has a color palette. And that color palette has purpose.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely.
A lot of purpose.
Yeah, I always enjoy talking about colors. I love them a lot. So, yeah, thanks for having me.
Absolutely. So 2 more episodes to go. This episode wraps up bringing a brand to life. And the next episode is going to really be focused on now what do we do that we have the brand in the tangible? How do we allow the brand to work for us? So, Madeline, I'll see you on episode 5. And this is about to be a really awesome discussion.
All right, I'll see you soon.
Sounds good. Thank you.